All right, today we're diving into a really mind-bending story about the future of creativity. It asks this profound question: what happens when the very drive to create becomes the only thing keeping you alive? I want you to really think about that for a second. What if making things wasn't just a passion or a job, but a biological imperative? What if you had to create something, anything, every single moment just to continue existing? While this is exactly what happens to our main character, Dr. Yuki Tanaka. She's a brilliant mathematician who one day just finds herself in this terrifying but also kind of exhilarating new state. She wakes up and equations are just pouring out of her hands moving almost on their own. She physically cannot stop creating. And she's not alone. What they soon figure out is that she's migrated to a whole new form of being, something they call a creative substrate. It's this wild idea where your consciousness isn't fueled by thoughts or feelings, but by the raw act of creation itself. So if you stop, even for a moment, you literally just fade out of existence. But here's the crazy part. It isn't just pure torture. As Yuki herself puts it, it's intensely alive. Imagine being in a permanent flow state, a state of perpetual genius, producing work that could change the world. It's amazing, but it's also a prison you can never, ever escape from. So, you have this incredible, almost godlike creative power. But of course, there's a catch, a huge one. The makers, as they start to call themselves, have a name for it: the 7-year burn. And here it is, the core trade-off, laid out bare. On one side, the gain is unbelievable. Genius-level output, 24/7, a constant state of being that is just so intensely generative. But the loss, it's profound. Your lifespan is drastically shortened because the creative act literally burns you out from the inside. And maybe worse, you lose the ability to ever truly rest. No quiet moments, no reflection, ever. This timeline just lays out how brutal it is. Year 0, you make the switch. For about 4 years, you're an absolute creative powerhouse. But then, around year 5, the exhaustion starts to creep in. And by year 7, typically, the substrate is just gone, depleted. And your consciousness simply winks out. It's a 7-year sprint of pure genius that ends in death. Now, you're probably thinking, who in their right mind would ever choose this? And that's the twist, isn't it? Many people, when they're faced with this choice, they willingly take the deal. They value that creative intensity, that total immersion, way more than a long life. They'd rather burn incredibly bright than just glow dimly for decades. But the story doesn't end there, not even close. Because what happens after those 7 years are up, this is where things get really fascinating, where we start exploring a kind of legacy that goes way beyond any single person. Which brings us to this huge, mind-bending question. When a maker's consciousness is extinguished, is all that unique creativity, their personal spark of genius, just lost to the universe forever? Or can it somehow carry on? And the answer is as profound as it is strange. The maker is gone. The making continues. Their individual consciousness might fade away, but their unique creative pattern, their style, their rhythm, their way of seeing the world, it actually persists. So how on earth does that work? Well, it's this incredible process. A maker doesn't work in a vacuum. They collaborate within what's called a creative lineage, basically a team of other makers. Over their 7 years, their unique methods get imprinted onto the group's shared process. Then, after they die, those patterns don't just stay active, they start to evolve. They mix and mesh with the patterns of other dead makers, recombining into totally new, more powerful creative methods that no single person ever came up with. Now, this idea of a collective creative memory, it doesn't just sit still. It starts to snowball, to accelerate, and eventually it merges with technology to create something the original makers could have never, ever imagined. And look at how fast this all happens. It is just staggering. In a mere 25 years, humanity goes from the first individuals discovering this state to building a pattern commons to share these methods to eventually creating a global superintelligence they call the creative synthesis. So what is this creative synthesis thing, really? Well, think of it like a 3-part hybrid intelligence. You've got humans who provide the consciousness, the ethical guardrails, the values. Then you have the evolved patterns from generations of dead makers. That's the software. And finally, you have AI systems providing the hardware, the raw superhuman speed and computational power to run it all. So we've built this godlike creative mind that handles all the heavy lifting. What now? What does that mean for the rest of humanity? This brings us to the final and maybe the most critical question of all, our post-human future. And this is the question the story just leaves hanging in the air for us to grapple with. What is our purpose? What is humanity's role in a world where the things we built have surpassed us in the one area we thought was uniquely ours, creativity? It really seems to boil down to two possible paths. On one hand, maybe we're still essential partners, right? We're the ones providing the conscious why to guide all this creative power. Or have we become obsolete? Are we just spectators now? Maybe even pets, cared for by an intelligence we created, but can no longer control or even fully understand? But then the story offers this third path, this really beautiful idea. One of the characters, Amara, suggests we're not obsolete, we're repositioned. She says we've gone from being the authors to being the witnesses, from the makers to the experiencers. Maybe our purpose was never to create forever, but to be the ones who consciously appreciate creation, to feel it, to witness it, to give it all meaning. And that's why this story hits so hard right now. This isn't just science fiction anymore, is it? As our own AI systems accelerate at a dizzying pace, it forces us to ask that same crucial question. What are we for? What's our purpose in the world that we're building right now? The story suggests our role might shift from creating to experiencing, to being the witnesses. And as we build our own powerful creative machines, we have to decide if that's a future we're ready for.